Hi, this is our group presentation on cultural assimilation barriers within the education system and how anthropologists are researching and studying said barriers and paving the way for individuals to have their own right of cultural identity within the education system and American society. Assimilation is the process in which individuals or groups of people that have different ethnic heritage are absorbed into the dominant culture of a society. This is according to Encyclopedia Britannica. Assimilation itself is on the more extreme form of acculturation. Acculturation is the process of change in artifacts, beliefs, and customs which result from the contact of two or more cultures. This is also according to Encyclopedia Britannica. Now, assimilation can be forced or unforced. Unforced assimilation is when an individual or group feels an urge to adopt practices or beliefs of another culture. This can include the other culture's language or religion. One example of this is Sarah enjoys listening to Korean pop, which inspired her to learn the Korean language. Now, nobody is forcing Sarah to learn Korean. She is simply taking it upon herself, of her own free will, to learn Korean, perhaps to understand the music that she listens to so much. Forced assimilation is when a minority group or is forced to change their beliefs, language, and religion to those of the larger, more established majority group. Now, from the perspective of the majority group, they're coming from an ethnocentric belief that their culture is superior to others. Now, one example of this is when Imperial Japan once tried to enforce policies on Korea and Taiwan to replace their languages to Japanese and identify as Japanese people. They attempted to do this by placing children in schools which included teaching them the Japanese language. Now, this is very similar to what happened in America during the time of 1790 and 1920, in which Native American children were forced into boarding schools, which was enforced by the United States. Furthermore, they forbade the Native American children from using their own names and were given new names, which were more American in order for them to assimilate into American society. They also forbade them to use their native languages and forbade them from practicing their religion and culture. This is a quote from Hiram Price, Commissioner of Indian Affairs. It says, "It is cheaper to give them education than to fight them." And I wanted to include this because I feel that it really showed the perspective that the American government was coming from deciding not to put their money towards killing them, but towards educating them. But really, they were just trying to kill them by killing their culture and getting rid of them in that way. Here's a picture of Native American students and their teacher in a physics experiment class. In regards to differences between Western and First Nation knowledge systems, the most powerful education system in Western culture includes emphasis on these three main factors. This includes religion, literacy, and numeracy. First Nation education systems mainly prioritize family and group socialization, skill development, oral teachings, and traditions. Now, this isn't to say one is better than the other. This is just to say what makes the two different. One example of how anthropologists are researching these barriers is this journal from this journal called Barriers in the Transfer Process for Hispanic and Hispanic Immigrant Students. During the study, they did the ethnographic methods which included principally participant observation of students and their families, interviews, and case studies were used to analyze the barriers, 3 of which were not reported in the literature. Now, also in the study, they questioned the students in regards to how they felt held them back in regards to going to a 4-year university instead of just settling for an associate's. Because they found that a majority of immigrants and Hispanic students were just deciding not to go to a 4-year university. Individuals of other cultures, including immigrants, face barriers in regards to English language competence, according to anthropologists who did study on Hispanic immigrant students. They also found that they were apprehensive when deciding on a university because they feel that they won't be well received in predominantly white population and will not fit in. These are some of the negative sides in regards to the cultural barriers and how Hispanic students and other minorities feel that they just won't fit in with American mainstream education systems today. Thank you.
The reasons all young U.S. Hispanics give for not continuing their educations. Their grades are not high enough. They do not need more education. They cannot afford school. They simply do not like school. They have limited English, or they need to support their family. Over 70 of those surveyed said that they needed to support their families. And this could be because those living within the poverty threshold have obligations outside of education. Those struggling with being Americanized, even more so. Cultural assimilation in education systems today. Anthropological research. A study done by the Department of Anthropology at the University of Texas at Dallas felt that many of the barriers these and other Hispanic students face are encountered by many Black, other minority, and low-income students. According to research by DoSomething.org, by the end of 4th grade, Hispanic and low-income students are already 2 years behind grade level. By senior year, they are 4 years behind. The numbers are just as startling for Native American students. Only 49%, less than half, of Native students graduate from high school, compared to the national average of 86%. And just 11 of those Native students earn a degree in college, compared to the national average of 29%. How cultural assimilation and education systems work today. The individual is forced to adopt a Western education, which causes them to devalue their own knowledge. If the group or individual does not assimilate, they will be less likely to reap society's benefits due to barriers. And future generation children of First Nations children will be more likely to assimilate due to the detachment of their native culture. To reiterate, the American school system has used forced assimilation. Enforcing English as the primary spoken tongue is the first step to assimilating and integrating. Along with speaking more American, one is also expected to dress more accordingly. This means any garments or clothing related to customary or religious beliefs outside of American norms are to be stripped away. Although these things have little to nothing to do with education, anti-immigration lobbyists believe they are a distraction and a hindrance, and those not willing to conform are not assimilating. In fact, there are programs that have been set in place to ensure assimilation. For example, the First Nations Student Success Program. This is a federal program which funds reserved schools, if they join the program and adhere to their rules. These rules will include educations conform to Western knowledges, that of literacy and numeracy. However, this curriculum does not include First Nation knowledge. The want to strip minorities and Native Americans of their cultural identities is clear. Still, it's worth mentioning that some immigrants entering this country are already educationally advanced without help from our school system and then continue to excel upon arrival. From a holistic perspective, reports have shown that several groups immigrating to the United States arrive with reasonable education and some with higher education that supersede that of the average American. This can be said of various Hispanic immigrants as well. Those arriving from South America and Cuba follow the same catch-up pattern, arriving somewhat undereducated, but quickly exceeding average U.S. education levels with the first generation born in this country. Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru are among the leading countries of origin. While countries in Central America are still lingering behind, some believe that later generations and their intermarriages are also a part of the issue. Some generations aren't identifying as Hispanic any longer, and therefore they are not included in the research in relation to education and immigration today. According to this chart, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Central America, and even China have the average education of first and second generation males that supersede that of the U.S. white male. Second generations in over 10 countries have shown vast improvement over time. But at what cost? It's evident that with proper instruction and the funds allocated towards help-based programs, both Native American and immigrant children alike can succeed in their scholastic pursuits. Several of these children come from poverty-stricken countries and arrive here in hopes of pursuing the American dream. Unfortunately, their environments aren't always welcoming or improve upon arrival to the United States. Still, there are solutions available, and these solutions include more funding towards literacy programs for adults to better understand and help their children with their education, access to information on how political and cultural systems function in America, to better understand and engage with their children during their time in school here. More Americans developing a we attitude versus a them versus us mentality that only hinders the pursuit of higher education in America. And lastly, better access to early education for both Native American and immigrant students to aid in their development. Thank you.